taxing bodies to go in depth and in detail over the TIF plan once it's prepared. And secondly is a public hearing, which if we stay on schedule will be held sometime in May back there at City Hall, where we'll actually have a TIF plan on file in more detail that we can talk about what the plan is and hear public comment on that. So the informational sheet that I passed around, we talked a little bit what the intent of the city is to consider amending TIF 6. On the back side there, city owns TIF 6, which is the only TIF, 6 is kind of a misnomer. It's the only TIF in existence in the city of Oakview right now. It is the blue color on the back there. And the highlighted portion is what the city has asked our firm to conduct a study for possible inclusion in an amendment to add that property back into TIF 6. And briefly, I guess I will give a summary of how TIF works. TIF is an economic development tool available to municipalities in Illinois. The city of Oakview has very successfully used it in the past. A number of the residential subdivisions have developed by the assistance of TIF. What I call advanced logistics, which is super value now. The Love's Travel Stop out there, much of the businesses on the east side of I-39 at the interchange were all developed with the assistance of TIFs, an economic development tool. Allows the city to create a funding source to provide the infrastructure to support those businesses such as water and sewer, and also allows the city to offer an incentive to some of those businesses to locate in the city of Oakview. So that's all been completed. Those businesses that are up and operating have been very successful, have added to the tax base, the employment, plus the construction jobs, and constructing all of them, and help the city with their infrastructure. Another component of TIF has been the redevelopment and the ongoing redevelopment of the downtown area where we sit now. And the city has had a facade improvement program in place for a few years. They are encouraging businesses to relocate downtown. You can see some of the restaurants that have located, and to improve the appearance and of their buildings to thereby increase the assessed value. So the downtown area in general and some of the commercial strip on Columbia Avenue and some of the commercial strip out by I-39 is no longer in the TIF district. And as you all know, being Oakview residents, there are a number of vacancies, there are a number of properties that are underutilized, not really using up to their potential. Had tragedies out by I-39 with Cindy's burning down and some of the other businesses closing. So the city asked us to take a look at what would it take to add those properties back to the existing TIF district, which is TIF 6, so that we could use TIF funds to incentivize growth in those areas and also to continue to improve the infrastructure, the water, the sewer, the roads in those areas. So that's the intent of what's being done. How TIF operates is TIF captures the growth in the assessed value. All of us that pay real estate tax on their own property in Illinois, our real estate tax bill is determined by two factors: the assessed value of the property, what the assessors determine our property is worth, times the tax rate of the property. And the tax rate is made up of all the taxing bodies that make up the tax rate. That's how much you're going to pay in real estate taxes, whether your property is in a TIF district or not in a TIF district. If it's in a TIF district and the property grows over the base is what is first put into a TIF. That growth goes back to the city in a special fund to use for TIF economic development purposes. Broadly speaking, it's promoting growth, offering an incentive to the developers or owners to improve their property. Also, the city can use it for public infrastructure improvements that need to be done. So that's how TIF generally works. So if you take a vacant piece of property or a piece of property that maybe the business that was operating on is now closed and that property's got a $5,000 a year tax bill, if that property is improved, something is built new on it, it's rehabilitated, a business moves in, and now it gets a $15,000 a year real estate tax bill. That $10,000 difference is the TIF fund, goes into the TIF fund that the city can use in the TIF district to promote growth and economic development within the TIF district. The city can't put that money in the general fund. They don't use it to pay salaries, police officers or street workers, for example. It's used for those limited purposes. So, that being said, that's how TIF works. That's the area we're conducting a study on. That study is ongoing. Ultimately, there will be a plan put on file. That will be an evaluation of all the properties that are considered to be included in this area. The area is not going to be any bigger than this. It could be smaller. I will tell you, in working with the city and the staff of the city, they've been very conscious and very much so trying to limit this TIF district to commercial and or any industrial properties that are in the area. The intent is not to promote residential growth. Now, there are some residential properties in the TIF district, and that can't really be avoided. We minimize it as much as we can, because the TIF has to be contiguous. And if you go down the street right here, or you go down Columbia Street, you will see a business, then a house, and then a business. So that's unavoidable. The other thing is that the city wants to be able to use TIF dollars for the infrastructure, water, street, sidewalk, electrical, then the area has to be in the TIF district. So that's why there are approximately, and again, the study's ongoing, but there's approximately 70 to 75 residential structures within the proposed study area. So that being said, I've talked enough. It's a public hearing, public meeting, as the TIF Act calls it. So we're here to receive any public comments that you may have. Yes, sir.
I have a question. So what you're saying is the blue areas here are what's still left in the.
Those are in TIF 6, which was set up in 2018. Becky, do you know this gentleman's name, or?
I do not. Could they come to the podium and?
Oh, okay. She has to keep some basic minutes, so I'm just gonna ask people to identify themselves. I know you know a lot of people in Oaksby, but.
Sir, if you can come to the podium and.
If you could just come to the podium and
Which story?
don't put me
Right
on
here.
that
Yes, so to
spot.
answer your question, the blue area is one that's already in TIF 6, which the city established.
Nobody's hearing anything.
Okay, because I own some property in that was sold. So what you're looking at is
Adding the highlighted area.
the yellow area, bringing it back into the TIF.
Adding that to TIF 6.
Okay, that answered my question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Tony Alvarado. I live at 357 West Porter.
How you doing, Tony?
Good, man. So behind my house, there's this property that was being developed. And there was a resolution about not having trees every 30 feet or 20 feet. I read a thing about it. And I believe last week.
I
there
believe
was
he's
some
talking
meeting,
about
was there any
storage units.
resolution about that? Was there any?
That'll be.
That's on the agenda
That's
for
on the agenda
tonight's
for the
talk about.
meeting.
Okay, well, I have a few things to say. Trees are good, and I think you should put trees up. If you're gonna have a facility that has a lot of metal buildings, a lot of heat,
So
there should
that's
be
one,
trees. Well, I mean, I'm still, I'd like to finish what I was saying.
this is the
This is not
TIF, this
the
is the
meeting.
TIF meeting. The general meeting is at 7 PM and that will be one of the items on the agenda.
I guess I was told wrong.
I apologize for that, yeah.
You're welcome to
Thanks
stay.
for your
You're welcome to
comments,
stay.
Tony, and
Well,
please stay.
But your audio, you know, and I mean, I just don't understand why you would even consider that. Because if you consider it, then you have to consider it for every other business.
So
And I know that this is not.
this isn't really the venue for it, so
But,
to answer your question though, it's considered because it's a variance request. So anytime somebody puts in a variance request, it goes, so what you saw live at the meeting is that was the zoning board of appeals and also the planning commission. So it's their job to evaluate that and then make recommendations to the council. The council will be discussing that tonight.
I guess the other thing I would say is, why are there 7 or 8 cars on that property? Just sitting there,
So
right out my back.
great topic for, I just want to make sure that you have the right venue because you don't even have the council happens is not here yet even. So we're not in session with the city attorney and stuff like that. So I want to make sure that your questions get answered at the regular meeting for you. If that helps. And if you're not present for that, I'll make sure to ask the attorney those questions for you.
I put a written, I handed in a written statement last week or before the meeting. So if you just want to read that.
Becky, do you have that on file?
It was read at the meeting, yes.
Would you like that read at the general council meeting?
That would be great.
I can do that for you if we have
That'd
that.
be great.
Okay, you bet. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony.
Tell your mama I said hello. You got it. Thank you. Doug, would you like me to come to the podium or stand here?
Whichever you'd like.
I would.
Thank you very much, Council, for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Doug Kramarczyk. I'm an Oglesby citizen, and I'm also the president of the school board in Oglesby as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. I just would like the council to address maybe two different issues. The first issue is there's been some talk about how this amendment would not affect individual citizens or taxpayers, but I would like either Herb or whoever may to address how this may affect other taxing bodies in the city, such as the Oglesby School District. And then secondly, I know there was some discussion from Herb regarding the idea of the TIF districts bringing in business and whatnot. The other question that I have is a lot of these proposed areas have already been developed, so I'm concerned or confused, I guess, how a lot of this is going to bring in new development to the city as well. So if those could be addressed by whoever.
I can address the later half. I'd be happy to address that.
Thank you.
So yeah. So the last 6 years, I would say the city has actually had quite a bit of success with the facade program that was created. I think it was actually created under Finley's administration. A lot of success came from that. The last 4 years during Rivara's administration, we had you see a lot of downtown areas that were kind of developed, whether it be Cordelinos, the root beer stand, a lot of things like that. And it raises the value, brought more economic opportunity to the city. So again, that's only really happened in the last 6 years. What we've done, even in our this administration, is we've updated the facade improvement program to include a lot more areas and more opportunities to bring in new businesses that have never developed here before. We've had some interest in it. For example, the Bon Voyage. That is that new nice RV boat storage facility that has flex office spaces and everything like that too. That was one of the results that came out of our new facade program. So these areas that we're entering, if you go downtown through the downtown district, we have 22 properties right now that are vacant and not being utilized. I think we've measured 5 or 6 of them are actually move-in ready right now, but there's a lot of them that probably need some work and some love. So by doing this, by putting these back into there, this will give us that opportunity to extend that facade program to see if we can get more downtown business going for that. And as far as the larger areas, the industrial areas, GTI, granted, it's not in this TIF because that was TIF 1. But that's one of the more successful items that we did have from that. That TIF was in existence for a very long time, and it took many, many years before we got to the success that we are here today. So again, the whole idea of this is that we're giving ourselves more opportunities to develop areas other than just the known TIF 6 that we have, specifically the vacant downtown districts, if that makes sense. And then as far as the agreements that we have with the school,
Yeah.
Herb might be able to talk to that a little
I
more.
guess what I would say to that, Doug and Dr. Pillen, is the city has an agreement right now with the school district returning some of the increment generated in TIF 6. If you want to talk about that agreement, I mean, I think the city would be open to we'll get together, a group of us, and talk about that agreement.
Excuse me.
The city has no intention to make any negative changes to that agreement, but if you want to revisit that agreement, we can talk about it and see what's there. So this property, if nothing else happened, would be part of TIF 6, and you have an agreement that covers it. But we can look at that agreement if you want to talk about it some more. Okay. Anyone else have any comment? Sure.
Brian Showing. I'm new at this and I don't know TIF too much about it. How does that help? Like if I want to build something, how does that work?
Yeah, so how that works for a private property owner or developer, Assuming that your property is included in the TIF district, the city has an application, that's the starting point. You complete that application, talking about whether you're building something new or you're rehabbing an existing building. The city has our office then review that application, determine if what you want to do is TIF eligible. There's only certain things that are eligible under the TIF Act as far as reimbursable. And if the city wants to offer you an incentive to do your project, we would then negotiate an agreement. Any money being returned to a property owner or developer has to have an agreement with the TIF Act. So typically what the city has done in the past is what's called a pay-as-you-go agreement. In other words, if you make improvements to the property and you cause the real estate taxes to increase by X amount on an annual basis because you've improved the property, the city would reimburse you some percentage of that X amount for your TIF eligible costs over a defined period of time or until you are at cost. So that's typically how it works.
Thank you.
Doug, you had some really good detailed questions. Does that kind of answer everything for you, or?
Yeah, it does. I may disagree with a couple comments that Herb had mentioned, but that's certainly something, as long as there's an open conversation of us to be able to address the stuff down the road, that's fine. I don't need to get into detail with anything now. But as long as the conversation can remain open, that's really what I'm concerned about.
Okay, yeah, that-
Always welcome.
And what was your name?
Austin. So, was this, at least part of it, like downtown, for instance, was that part of a TIF that just recently expired?
This area, most of this area, if not all, and I'd have to compare the maps, was part of TIF 1, which expired 2022, Becky?
2021, right?
2021, payables wait, yep.
Is there any other public comments? Yes, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Dave Torres, the South County Board. Would this amendment open up an internal agreement with the city, with the county?
Well, I mean, the city and any taxing body are always able to talk about an agreement. So I think this amendment doesn't change it one way or the other, so.
This could open the door for it, or anytime?
Well, I think anytime, the door, I would think that the city's door is always open if you want to talk about something. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't make that decision, but I would think so.
Any other public comments on anything else? If there are none, we're adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Becky, can you find that gentleman's,
Yeah.
and then I can read that, or if Tony wants to read it, or whoever can read his public comments for him.
Oh, I don't try to hold it.
That'd be fine.